Hello everyone and welcome back to our channel. This is Cheryl with C&C. Are we there yet? Did you know that there's a winery in Florida? The grapes are grown here, it's produced here, and it's Lakeridge Winery in Claremont. So today we're taking you on a tour of this winery. Follow the adventures of C&C.
Taking my chances along with my dreams.
Oh, see, I told
I just started, so do we continue on? Because you said it just started, so.
Hi, Cheryl.
Hi, Lily. Are you excited?
I'm very excited.
I love wineries.
I'm recording for you.
And this is a winery right here in our home state.
His was the first attempt to colonize and establish missions in Florida. But it was a group of French Huguenot settlers on the northeastern Florida coast that discovered among the lush vegetation an abundance of flourishing grapevines. It was from this chosen fruit, the native muscadine, that the first American wine was fermented more than a century and a half before grapevines were planted in California. The pioneers of the mid-1800s also found in Florida a land rich in natural resources. The Central Florida Ridge, distinguished by its rolling terrain and abundance of lakes, quickly established itself as an agricultural base. In addition to citrus and tomatoes, this region emerged as a center of commercial viticulture, at one time supporting more than 4,000 acres of vineyards. These early attempts, however, involved non-native grapes introduced by European settlers, and the wines were unable to withstand the intense pressure of Florida's semi-tropical environment. Florida's great potential lied in the development of adaptive bunch grapes and improved varieties of the native muscadine. It is this winemaking heritage we now invite you to share, a heritage rich in history, in tradition, in family. We welcome you to Lakeridge Winery. Seeking to re-establish wine growing in Central Florida, and inspired by his family's agricultural history and his father's love of winemaking, Gary Cox chose the Central Florida Ridge to establish Lakeridge Winery and Vineyards.
Both of my grandparents were in agriculture. They farmed in Gadsden County, which is a little bit to the west of Tallahassee. A good number of my uncles also were in agriculture, and early on I ran one of the farms for an uncle of mine for several years before I went back into construction with my dad, and then ultimately back to school and majored in accounting. So I did that for a pretty good while too. And my father, even though he was in the construction industry, he did make some wines as I was a kid on a fairly regular basis. I had tried some of his wines, wasn't too impressed, but he liked it, and so that was fine. Everybody ought to be able to drink what they like to drink. We think we're doing a better job now than perhaps he did, but we've probably got a lot better equipment now than he had too. Charles, my son, had started off early on helping me some in a little vineyard that I was doing just to see how bad I'd messed that up. Probably doesn't hurt to have a little place where you try it out first and see if it's going to work for you. He worked there for me some in the vineyard on weekends and so forth, and then as we started off our winery in Tallahassee called Lafayette Vineyards, he was out there sitting on a tractor most all the summers mowing through the vineyard or doing other jobs in the vineyard. It's been a joy to work in the winery with him, as well as the other employees that we have here, that all form a team, and without that kind of a team that we've had, it would have been impossible to do what we've done here. When we came down to this area, we looked at a good number of areas around here, and there was a lot of land for sale at that point in time, having been frozen out in the citrus freezes. And this one, where you had the view across the top of this hill, not only was it something that we felt would be good for growing grapes, but it also was a nice, pleasant place to work too. So that helped a lot in terms of figuring out where we wanted to actually locate our winery. Certainly what the advantage of the wine business, as far as I'm concerned, is we get to see our customers come in. They go through our tour. We show people a lot about how wine is made, how we're making wine. They get a free tasting that lets them try our wines. And then if it's something that pleases them, then we get to see a customer go out very pleased with the purchase that they've made. That didn't happen quite that way in the CPA business.
The way I remember the winery starting was my father woke my mother and sister and me up one morning and said, we're going to plant a vineyard. And it wasn't unusual for us to have some abnormal project for a weekend, but this is what he had planned for that weekend, and had about 5 acres picked out beside our house that we planted a vineyard that weekend. And needless to say, that was the test vineyard for what was to come a few years later when we actually went into the wine business. Our goal for the guests as they come through the winery is that they're educated on the entire winemaking process, from the planting of the vineyard, the harvest, the wine production, and the best part is the end of the tour when they get to taste the wines and pick out their favorite. It's nice when guests fill out surveys and they tell us that they've been through wineries all over the world and they learn the most here. That's pretty special. We produce so many wines because I think we have to. Everybody enjoys something different, different tastes and flavors. We kind of run the whole gamut from red to white, dry to sweet, sparkling wine, a port, a cream sherry. And everybody likes something different, and I think that's okay. 20 or 30 years ago, they told you that you had to have white wine with fish and chicken, and you had to have a dry red wine with meat. And I say, why don't you just drink what you like and eat what you like, and you'll probably be pretty happy with your meal. We chose Claremont for the site of Lakeridge Winery because it's a beautiful part of Florida. The rolling hills surrounded by lakes. The people in this community have embraced us the entire time we've been here, and that's always extremely important. And when you look around, you think, what's not to like?
Some from our own vineyards and also others from around the state of Florida that we contract with. They are immediately crushed and pressed into juice. The white juice goes immediately into tanks where we start the fermentation and add sugar in order to create a wine that has about 12% alcohol. The red grapes are crushed and sent directly to a tank, all the skins and seeds combined, where they ferment on the skins to extract the red color from the skins for about 2 days. The fermentation on the reds is already ongoing. Generally speaking, either white or red wines take about 4 to 6 weeks to complete the fermentation. And at that point, the wines settle just by gravity, so that some of the impurities that come in, the grape pulp, seeds that may get into the juice, settle out to the bottom of the tank, where we can then pull the clear liquid off of the sediments. That's a process called racking. Lab testing is conducted through the lifetime of the wine. It starts in the vineyard prior to harvest, when we test the grapes for their sugar content, their acid, and a compound known as pH. All of those things are important in the finished wine, so that we test those, we determine a harvest time, and once the grapes are pressed, we continue to test the juice through the fermentation, looking for drops in sugar content and clarification of the wine. We also look at aromas during that process. Once the wine is in a finished format, we're just continuing to test it on a monthly basis to make sure that it's protected while it's in the tanks awaiting bottling. And then just prior to bottling, when we do our finishing ingredients, we'll test the wine again to make sure that it meets our profile for the particular wine that we're going to be bottling.
This painstaking process is part of a strong commitment to excellence in the winemaking art, reflected in the quality of all Lakeridge wines and in the dedication of the people who make them. The original American wine from our southern heritage is of the native muscadine grape. This is the legacy Lakeridge Winery continues, rooted in a living history and passed on through family traditions.
Y'all got any questions so far? Oh, you think you're a pretty smart group, eh?
Where can we find a wine?
Hey, you've been drinking. When you walked in that front door, that wine was everywhere. Oh my God. People try to get me all the time, you know. I gotta keep up on it. All right? All right, so if there's no questions, we're not gonna stop.
Hi, Lulu.
Go, and it's also good. It's also good with just good conversation, which I'm sure all of you guys do. Have. So, you're gonna.